Welcome to Mr. Strawman. What could happen on a ship in the middle of the ocean? All the worst. I escaped a ghost ship, the Deep Runner. I worked aboard a vessel called the Deep Runner for several seasons, long, freezing months in the North Atlantic, where the cold feels like it seeps into your bones no matter how much gear you wear. People don't end up on ships like that by accident. You end up there because life leaves you with few better options. Our crew wasn't exactly refined. Most of us had complicated pasts, unfinished business, or nowhere else to go. The captain, a man named Grant Holloway, once joked that the ship didn't run on fuel, it ran on desperation. The ship itself was old, worn down by years of harsh weather. Every wave made it groan. Every corridor smelled of salt and machinery. It always felt like the ocean was slowly reclaiming it piece by piece. On that particular trip, we sailed farther north than usual, chasing rumors of a massive catch. The captain had been unusually tense, constantly studying maps, rarely speaking. There was a strange feeling in the air, something none of us could quite explain, but we ignored it. That changed the night we pulled something up in the nets. At first, it looked like a tangled mass of seaweed and debris, but then someone noticed a shape, too smooth, too still. When we got closer, we realized it was a person, a young woman, maybe around 20, caught in the net. Her skin was pale from the cold, her body barely moving. What stood out most was her face. Her mouth was tightly wrapped with layers of tape, as if someone had tried to silence her. Despite everything, she was still breathing. We carefully brought her onto the deck. No one spoke for a moment. It didn't make sense. How could someone survive out there like that? One of the crew, Marcus, stepped forward and carefully removed the tape. I remember thinking we should stop, that something about this wasn't right, but I didn't say anything. The moment the tape came off, she inhaled sharply. Then came the sound. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't even loud. It was a low, steady tone, almost like a hum, but it carried in a way I can't describe, like it wasn't just something you heard, but something you felt. At first, everyone just stood there, confused. Then Marcus slowly stepped back, his expression blank, like he was listening to something far away. But no one expected that this hum would drive the entire team crazy. Without saying a word, he turned and walked toward the edge of the ship. No one reacted in time. He climbed over and disappeared into the water. That's when panic began to spread. The woman sat upright, her head slightly tilted, still producing that same sound. It grew stronger, more layered, almost like it was changing. One by one, people started reacting differently. Some covered their ears, others stumbled as if they were losing balance. A few simply walked away, drawn toward the edge as if responding to something we couldn't hear. I tried to stay focused, telling myself it wasn't real. There had to be a logical explanation. But then I looked over the side. At first, I thought I was seeing reflections. But then I realized they were faces. Dozens of them just beneath the surface. Young women, about the same age as the one on deck. Their eyes were open, their expressions blank, and their mouths moved in perfect synchronization with the sound. It wasn't just coming from her anymore. It was coming from all of them. The crew started falling apart after that. Some tried to resist, others simply gave in to whatever was pulling at them. Movements became erratic. Conversations turned into fragments. It felt like reality itself was slipping. I forced myself inside, grabbing anything I could to block out the sound. Cloth, tape, anything. Even then I could still feel it, faint but persistent, like it had already settled somewhere deeper. When I stepped back onto the deck, the situation had gotten worse. People were either gone or barely recognizable in their behavior. Some had vanished entirely. Others stood motionless, staring out into the dark water. I didn't stay long. I made my way to one of the storage containers and locked myself inside. But when he had completely lost hope, a real miracle happened. And for some, a curse. I don't know how long I stayed there. Time didn't seem to matter anymore. The sound never fully disappeared. It lingered, faint and distant, like a memory you can't quite forget. And then, suddenly, it stopped, completely. When they found me, I could barely react. I remember the door opening, the light, voices that didn't belong to the ship. Real voices. They told me I was safe. They brought me onto another vessel, asked questions I couldn't answer. What happened? Where was the crew? I tried to explain, but even to me it sounded impossible. They said they found the deep runner drifting, empty. No clear signs of what had happened, just silence. Just before dawn, I heard it again. A faint, low hum, like wind dragging itself across metal, but I knew it wasn't the wind. I shot upright, my heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears, and rushed out onto the deck, terrified and desperate to prove it wasn't real. The ocean was unnaturally still, gray and glass-like. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then I saw movement, something shifting just beneath the surface. I stared unblinking, and then they appeared. This time, there were far more of them, not dozens, hundreds. Faces of young women drifted just under the water, their eyes open and locked onto me, their lips moving in perfect, silent synchronization, as if they were all whispering the same song. The surface barely rippled around them, yet they felt immense, like part of something far larger than I could comprehend. I stumbled backward, barely able to stay on my feet. "Get out here, now!" I shouted, my voice cracking. I kept yelling until I heard footsteps behind me. The crew rushed onto the deck, voices overlapping, someone grabbing my shoulder. "Where? What are you seeing?" I pointed frantically at the water, but it was gone. Nothing but ordinary waves rolling under the pale morning sky. I stared, unable to process how quickly it had vanished. They were there. I knew they were there. There were. I started, but the words died in my throat. No one answered. When I turned back to them, I saw it in their faces, uneasy, doubtful, quietly disturbed. One of them looked away. Another just shook his head slightly. I didn't say anything else, but I know what I saw, and the worst part is, I know it's not over. The second story is about an equally frightening monster that haunts you right in the middle of the ocean. Something climbed onto our cruise ship. I don't usually choose cruises, but this one felt like the right escape. For the first couple of days, everything was effortless. Warm sun on the deck, endless drinks, laughter drifting from late-night shows, and that strange feeling that nothing could go wrong out here in the open ocean. That illusion shattered one evening. I was heading back to my cabin when I noticed a thin trail of water stretching across the corridor floor. It wasn't random. It formed shapes that almost resembled footprints, only wider, flatter, and strangely smooth, as if something without toes had passed through. The marks led toward the outer deck. Probably just a spill, I muttered to myself, though I didn't quite believe it. Inside my cabin, everything looked untouched. Bed neatly made, TV dark, the low hum of the mini fridge steady. Still, an uneasy feeling settled over me, like the room had been occupied moments before I arrived. I eventually lay down, telling myself I was overthinking. I woke to a scream. It echoed through the corridor, sharp and panicked. Footsteps rushed past my door. Then, more shouting. I grabbed my phone, using its dim light, and slowly approached the people. At first, nothing. Then I heard it, a heavy, dragging sound, slow, deliberate, and wet, like something pulling itself along a slick surface. "What is that?" I whispered. At the edge of my view, something appeared, a foot, large, greenish, webbed. I jerked back instantly, my pulse racing. The air outside seemed to thicken with each passing second. The sound grew closer until it stopped right outside my door. Then came a low, unsettling noise, sniffing. It lingered there, as if searching. A sudden bang shook the door. Another and another. "Go away. Please just go away," I breathed, barely audible. The hinges creaked under the force. I dropped to the floor and slid under the bed, pressing my hands over my mouth to silence my breathing. Then silence. A distant scream pulled whatever it was away. I stayed frozen for what felt like minutes, until I heard something else. soft crying, a child. He faced a difficult choice: believe and help, or give in to fear. "No, that's not real," I whispered to myself. "That's a trap." But the crying continued, fragile, frightened, painfully human. I clenched my jaw. "You're not a hero. Stay here." Another scream echoed, closer this time. I moved before I could change my mind. Throwing the door open, I spotted a small girl crouched down the corridor, no more than 7 years old. "Hey, I'm coming," I called. I ran toward her, nearly slipping on the damp floor. As I steadied myself, I caught a glimpse of something near the railing. Long, curved claws gripping the metal. "Take my hand," I shouted. She hesitated, trembling. "It's okay. I've got you," I said softer. The moment she grabbed me, we turned and ran. Behind us, something landed heavily. I glanced back and saw it fully for the first time. The creature stood nearly 2 meters tall, its body vaguely human in shape but distorted. Its skin had a dull green sheen, layered with thin, scale-like textures that reflected the dim corridor lights. Along its sides, faint gill slits pulsed slowly, opening and closing as it breathed. Its arms were too long, ending in sharp, curved claws that clicked against the floor. Fin-like ridges ran along its back and forearms, twitching slightly as it moved. Its face barely resembled anything human. Sunken eyes, wide and glossy, and a mouth that stretched unnaturally, revealing rows of small, uneven teeth. It tilted its head, watching us. Then it let out a low, vibrating wail. "Don't look at it, just run," I told the girl. More shapes appeared behind it, more of them climbing aboard, pulling themselves over railings with eerie coordination. After everything they'd seen, most people would have given up, but a chance for salvation still remained. We sprinted toward the stairs. One of the creatures dropped in front of us, but lost its balance on the slick floor and collapsed sideways. "Now!" I yelled, pulling her past it. We reached the upper deck and rushed into a restaurant, locking ourselves inside. For a while, there was only silence. The girl clung to me tightly. "What's your name?" I asked gently. "Mia," she whispered. "I'm Daniel. You're safe for now, okay?" She nodded, though her eyes stayed fixed on the door. Hours seemed to pass. Strange sounds echoed outside. Movement, distant calls, the unsettling scrape of claws against metal. Finally, I spoke. "We can't stay here forever. There's a radio in the control room." Mia looked up. "Will someone come?" "They have to," I said. "We just need to reach it." We prepared as best we could, using whatever we found in the kitchen. I tied her securely to my back so I could move faster. When we stepped outside again, the deck was eerily still. We moved carefully, keeping close to walls. Then they appeared. 1, 2, 5. More. They surrounded us slowly, their movements cautious but coordinated, their glossy eyes fixed on us. One creature tilted its head again as if studying us. Another let out a soft clicking sound, almost like communication. "They're watching," Mia whispered. We pushed forward, slipping through gaps, avoiding sudden movements. The creatures didn't rush. They closed in gradually, like a tightening circle. Finally, the stairs. We climbed, step by step. "Almost there," I said through clenched teeth. At the top, we burst into the control room and secured the door. I grabbed the radio. "This is... anyone, do you copy? We need help. Immediately." Static, then silence. Mia tugged at my sleeve. "Look," she said. Out on the water, something massive was rising. A dark shape broke the surface, sleek, metallic, unmistakably artificial. A submarine, no markings, no lights except a faint glow along its edges. We stared at it in silence. "Is that help?" Mia asked. I didn't answer because I didn't know. It was Mr. Strawman. And remember, some stories follow you home.